don't see, I get how all these fans are. They're stupid and they overreact to every little thing. But to send all the, I like how he responded to all those tweets.
How about it?
But look at all those tweets that he got that were like, oh man, you're turning your back on your family. His family? I mean, oh, they didn't turn their back on him when they traded him?
Yeah, right? Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. I can't understand how everybody's so butthurt about this. It's just, you got to think about it, man. I mean, it's baseball, for one, so it's the game the guy's going to sign whatever the hell he wants to sign, and obviously it's going to be better, whatever's a better fit for him. Yeah, I think of the allure of doing it with the team that, he signed with the Cubs, having broken the curse, allegedly out in Boston and kind of knowing Theo having been drafted by those guys and, everything else that kind of came along with it. It just seemed like a really good fit at the right time for him. Everything's kind of fallen into place, and I just like how classily, he went through and kind of responded to all those tweets instead of, going after guys and like Brandon Marshall starting to fight. Threatening to box a fan in the name of bullying. But no, I mean, just the way he handled, top-notch guy, and so I'm going to be excited to see kind of the way things play out.
Yeah, I always wonder, when they say like the relationship between a player, like they're like, oh, John Lester, he has a relationship with Theo Epstein. I wouldn't think, I've never heard of a great, healthy relationship between front office and players. It's usually, at best, it's, fine. It's either rocky or fine. It's not, great or they're best friends or anything. That's usually between the manager and the player. I would think that would have a far greater effect than some guy that used to work in the front office with the Red Sox.
Oh, absolutely. They did talk to, I guess, Joe Madden had spoken with Lester and kind of explained, his respect for him, having been, on the other side of the rivalry for so long, and knew that he was a hunter and a fisherman, and that's kind of something that Madden himself isn't necessarily into, but, he kind of hooked him up with the first base coach. He kind of got some trips planned, things like that. So, obviously, he's always about, getting close with his players, so he does have that relationship with them. But when it comes down to, Theo's relationship with John, I think a lot of that had to do with, when people think about, Theo Epstein, they always think sabermetrics. They always think about the numbers. People don't realize, when he was coming up, all the work that he was doing, with feet on the ground, going to these ball games in these rural towns and kind of learning, about the prospects. A lot of it was, yeah, sure, keeping the statistics, but a lot of it was also going through and actually, seeing the guy himself, and kind of figuring out that way and coming up with your own analysis. Because that's pretty much the best way to do it. You have to add both sides of it, kind of add those things together and make your own decision from that. And then, I think, when you go through all the work of scouting a guy and you see, a particular scout, as a player, long enough and you kind of talk to him here and there, you do eventually build that relationship. You know what I mean? And I think, Theo was always one of those hands-on guys in Boston, so it's probably not really, all that, difficult to kind of imagine that, but I do think it's probably incredibly rare, to find that, with many other general managers or presidents elsewhere with players.
Mm-hmm. And then, the other thing is I wonder what James Shields is going to do. Kind of an overrated guy, an overhyped guy, getting the name Big Game James. I don't think he goes back to Kansas City. I kind of think he's going to wind up in, I'm going to say San Francisco. I'm going to say San Francisco winds up with James Shields.
Yeah,
is that smart?
No, it's not really all that hard to imagine. He just seemed like the kind of San Francisco guy in terms of where, even though he has, eaten so many innings over the last, several years, he's always been one of those guys, that is throwing at least 200 innings, and is going to give you 30-plus starts a season. And I think, adding that and kind of, maybe having some shorter outings to kind of help his arm, recoup. And we've spoken about this before, about how, they might say that he's overhyped as Big Game James, but I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the guy goes out there and means so much to all of his teams that he's constantly throwing. You got to think, play with Tampa Bay, and they needed all the pitching they could get because their offense was so weak. And then they went and he played, with Kansas City, with, again, another weak offense where, they rely a lot, and rule heavily on that pitching staff. And so having thrown all those pitches all those years, and all the innings that he's thrown, going to a National League team, having, this 6-inning start, not necessarily being as concerned about throwing 200 innings, I think that's only going to benefit him in the long run. You might actually be able to see him be big game James in the playoffs. But, San Francisco definitely is looking to add another pitcher here. It's just going to be interesting to see, who they get. They are going after Scherzer, and we'll see what happens with Shields. You had Irvin Santana. He ended up signing with Minnesota today. So, again, Minnesota going after a little bit more pitching for another offseason, which is exactly what they needed. But, yeah, I mean, when it really does come down to the big names that are left in terms of pitchers, they're all coming off the market. You saw Masterson. He went to Boston today. A couple days ago, Liriano went back to Atlanta, or back to Pittsburgh. And, Hamill, he went back to Chicago. And so we'll kind of see what plays off. I mean, you still have Jake Peavy out there. I thought he was definitely a guy that was, going to be interested in coming back to San Francisco, considering his relationship with Bochy. And, it's Saban's going to do something. It's just a matter of figuring out what.
Yeah, I think, especially with Shields, these teams that are whiffing on Lester, the teams, the Red Sox not so much because they got Porcello, but somebody's going to drastically overpay for Shields because, I mean, it happens every year. There's they strike one, strike two on their first two options in free agency, and then they panic and give a bunch of money to, I don't know, a Jorge De La Rosa type.
Right. Yeah. That's just kind of the way the market works. It's going to be like that every year, where there's always going to be, that premium position where people are going to be looking to pay big money. Even if it's just, for a guy that's not maybe necessarily going to be able to contribute, as much as you would like him to, considering the money involved. But generally speaking, it's just going to happen. And so, I mean, there's a few guys still left here on the market, in terms of starters. But I mean, those are kind of some of the bigger names, and then you kind of work your way down the list a little bit. Hiroki Kuroda's still out there at the moment, and we'll kind of see what he's thinking. But Edson Volquez, he's still out there. But hey, when it really comes down to it, again, like I said, you're looking at Melky Cabrera, you're looking at Max Scherzer, kind of figuring out what's going to happen with Jed Lowry. That's kind of going to be something interesting. Alex Rios is still out there, and I think probably one of the more intriguing names. To me, kind of like the Chase Healy, is Drupal Cabrera. I thought he was a really good fit in Washington. When he did come in, he did bring that veteran presence that the ball club needed, also provide a little bit of offense, and just ended up being a relatively solid leader. From kind of maybe I guess an unexpected source, considering that they just pick him up at the deadline. But in Washington, they don't have a ton of holes to fill. And I think that's something where they might be willing to spend maybe a little bit more money to get him, just because knowing that he will be able to play short, will be able to play second, whatever they need, even though they have Desmond playing short. If it does come down to it, that's a guy they might be able to might be able to pick back up.
Yeah, I'm curious with Cabrera, with Asdrubal Cabrera, why there hasn't been more talk about him. I mean, he's not a superstar by any means, but he's coming up on his 30th birthday. But I feel like he could be a valuable piece. Like I mean,
he's been incredibly consistent.
Well, and if I were the Dodgers, I probably would have gone after him before Rollins.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think Rollins. I mean, you got to think about his attitude. So I'm sure he's going to fit in just fine with that Dodgers clubhouse. But all problems he was having with Charlie Manuel, and then everything kind of carried over with Ryan. It seemed like he was just one of those guys where it was just going to be his way or the highway all the time. And he's not the superstar that he was. I mean, you can't always let that fly, depending on where you're at. And so, no, I definitely thought that was interesting. But in terms of Cabrera, where he might end up, I mean, Oakland, if they're looking to make a splash, I mean, I think everyone's kind of shocked with the fact that Billy Bean's kind of going out there and dumping everyone in terms of moving Moss over to Cleveland. and then, the deal with Samardzija and letting Hamill go. It's kind of been a very interesting offseason for Oakland in particular, just to kind of figure out, which way they're going to go, because I don't think anybody thought that they were going to go and just let the bottom drop off, and kind of like they have. And so maybe they're looking to clear a little bit more room, I guess, financially. Right now they were kind of set. They didn't really have a whole ton of money committed. They were still, this is several weeks ago when they still had everybody on their roster. They're at about $73 million, and they were looking to maybe move up a little bit, kind of stay steady. But maybe they freed up a little bit more room to kind of finally chase that shortstop, to finally chase that second baseman that they need so desperately and have, needed so desperately for several years. So, maybe Cabrera is that guy for them. And, right now I don't think, the White Sox are looking to deal Lester Ramirez anymore. That seems to be, kind of out of the question. So, it's, a few more pieces left out here. Kobe Rasmus is still available. But in general, I think, like I said, pretty much we're watching all the big pieces kind of come together here and watching all these teams starting to shape up. And so, you got any more closing comments here before I think we head off to our last break?
Yeah, I do think my last comment is I think Oakland is playing possum right now. I think they're going to make a big move. They're just, I feel like they've made so many moves to dump pieces off that they're ready to make a big move that we're not seeing right now.
Yeah, they're hiding something, but I just can't put my finger on what. I mean, I'm not really sure what's out there for them to even do.
Yeah, well, I think it's going to have to be a trade. I don't think there's anybody other than Cabrera maybe, but I think there's a big trade out there that they're going to make that where somebody like a franchise eats a lot of salary. Like I wouldn't have been surprised if they would have wound up with Kemp. Something like that, where the other team eats a lot of the salary that's, put on them. And so we'll see.
Yeah. Well, it's all going to play out, and I think we're going to cut here to our last break. So, thanks again for listening to the Bob Sullivan Show. I think I'm going to hang around here, right? We're going to do a little bit of headlines?
Hang around and do some headlines.
Sounds good. Well, thanks, everybody, for listening to the Bob Sullivan Show here on Late Night Sports Talk, or Late Night Sports Radio. .com. What we're going to do, we're going to take a little break and hit the headlines.
Means nothing.